Thanks, Barney. I sent the council both a budget FY27 budget highlight sheet that outlines some of the things we'll be discussing tonight, as well as some specific discussion items that I'd like to review with you, as well as the FY27 proposed budget spreadsheets that we can pull up and review if need be. But just some of the general highlights of the budget. Income tax, obviously, as you know, is the lion's share of our revenue source in the town. And we expect to bring in approximately 3.78 million this year. And I have budgeted 3.74 for next year based on the average of the past 5 years. In order to try to do a sanity check on those numbers, I went back and I crunched numbers under different scenarios with variable January and March distribution averages, because those are the most volatile distribution months we have. And I averaged out highs and lows for January and March based on past distributions. I did it for 3-year and 5-year periods, and what I came up with was anywhere between 3.69 and 3.71 versus what I'm proposing to budget, which is 3.74, and that's a difference of like $30,000 to $50,000. But if we'd like to consider other ways to crunch those numbers in a way, or average them, if you will, just a general average over the past 3 years, that's something we can discuss this evening. The town's real property tax rate will decrease from 77/100ths of a cent to 79/100ths of a cent, I should say, to 77/100ths of a cent in FY27. We received the constant yield tax rate certification from the Department of Assessments and Taxation, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. Basically, they calculate the net assessable real property base in the town at 2 points, beginning of FY26 and beginning of FY27. And our net assessable real property base is expected to increase from 1.68 billion on July 1, 2025 to an estimated 1.7 billion on July 1, 2026. And as the net assessable base increases, the constant yield, as its name suggests, the constant yield tax rate will decrease, since it's, as its name suggests, constant yield, which will net us or yield us about $133,000, as it does every year since we follow the constant yield tax rate. Conversely, obviously, if net assessable real property base decreases, our constant yield would increase.
Just if I can add one point there that's pertinent to all of our discussions, it is still necessary for us to charge a property tax in order to be eligible for the tax duplication reimbursement. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we get
so when you're thinking about the 133,000 we're being taxed, we also gain the $275,000 from the tax reimbursement.
Right. And this year, I actually was going to raise that as an issue. This year, we're actually going to, we got our estimates from Montgomery County Department of Finance. And this year, I need to adjust the figure in the budget spreadsheets. I budgeted 275, but we've just received the estimates, and we'll receive 291.
Okay.
In municipal tax duplication reimbursement.
It only makes it more clear why we charge a property tax at all, because it's an enormous financial gain for the town. Yeah.
Hey, Barney, can I interject since Pilar is listening for the first time? We've seen, the town council has seen all these budget figures for about a week. And individually, if we had any questions, we would either ask Todd or the treasurer, who's our Carlo. But we've seen these before. So you won't hear a lot of back and forth now about any issues that we individually had.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Rich. That's helpful. Yeah, I was wondering if there were any background materials for the discussion. But thank you.
Just to put it in context of the real property tax rate of 77/100ths of a cent, that's effectively $77 per $1 million of assessed value. Quinn Varney asked when the budget work session was. She hope it's not now. I'm in a work meeting. So she won't be able to attend.
Okay, go on.
The town has for quite a while charged a utility property tax that's paid by utility companies, not by town residents, just for use of the right of way and our rights of way for Pepco and other utilities that attach to Pepco poles. And that rate is maintained at 66 cents per $100 of assessed value. And that yield is approximately $37,000 a year. With respect to staff salaries, a 3.4% COLA for staff is reflected in the budget, and that is consistent with the standard we use, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index from the percent change from January 125 to January 126. And we can talk more about that item later. We are projecting a surplus of $831,000 for next fiscal year. And the estimated surplus for FY26 is approximately $1 million. From general fund balance for our reserve perspective, we'll have a total reserve of 20.7 million and a net reserve of 13.2 million at the end of FY27. And that net balance reflects our commitment to provide $7.5 million to the Bethesda Market Park project. Those are the big highlights. Obviously, there are quite a number of line items in the budget. Many are programmatic, many are contractually driven from a price perspective, a cost perspective. We can certainly talk about any line items you wished to talk about, but I did outline some budget discussion items that I'd like to walk through with you if we could start that. We can start with income tax revenue estimates. I already briefed you as the first point on my my methodology of calculating income tax revenue. It's not quite a methodology when you average, but it's the only methodology I've been able to figure out. I mean, we have been up and down, mostly historically. We have we're going in about $380,000 this year over our budget. In 25, because we had an anomalous January distribution, which we told was the new norm, it was being normalized at January distribution. We got less than we budgeted by approximately $150,000. In 24, we got over $250,000 more than budgeted. In 23, we got almost $600,000 more than budgeted. And in 22, we got $1.2 million over budget. So it's not an easy way to, I mean, obviously the November distribution is the guide to what we'll get for the rest of the year to some extent. I mean, if the January, March distributions fluctuate greatly, we could be off by several $100,000, even though we know the November distribution. But I don't know of any holy grail crystal ball way of calculating what we'll receive. I guess the council's fully aware that about 6 people in the town generate about 25% of our income tax revenue. And there are a lot of variables involved here with respect to how to calculate it, because there's a lot of volatility, potential volatility in our receipts, which are usually fed from 2 years prior. And so I am not an economist, and I don't have a crystal ball into how we should estimate this. So I will turn that over to the council for discussion.
Carla, our treasurer, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about, and this is my first year in this capacity, so be helpful maybe if I could ask Todd to speak a little bit to like a 5-year average versus some other duration, be it more or less. As I look back briefly and see that it seems like 5 years has been sort of a rolling average that has been used in the past, but I'm just wondering if there's been thought, or if you want to share any thoughts about a different time horizon to reflect, be it, more years or fewer years. And I don't know that it's going to it would make a significant difference this year, but it's probably a question worth commenting on a bit.
Sure, absolutely. I did crunch the numbers this afternoon, and I was able to. I adjusted for an anomalous or a normalized January distribution initially when I did the estimate, and I then normalized for the most recent January distribution, which was much higher. I also had to adjust the budget numbers because the July distribution accrues to the previous fiscal year. But I've taken 5 years averages and adjusted for the most recent January distribution. So I went back and kind of normalized that as the new norm over 5 years, and I came out at 3.707. And I took a 3-year average after I normalized, and it came out at 3.711. So it's
Todd, what do you mean by normalizing? Help me understand in the context of January payment.
yeah, the January 2025 payment, and if you just bear with me a second, I can just pull it up.
While you're doing that, one of the things I've always been curious about is this is income based, and since 6 people represent 25%, as the town's housing stock changes over and tear downs happen and housing prices increase, my assumption is that the people who are buying those new houses are going to be higher incomes than the people who were there before.
Yeah.
And so it's curious that over time, our actuals have been decreasing. So I don't know. I can't figure out how to reconcile that, that as house prices increase, incomes of people owning those probably increase. But over time, our income distribution from the state is going down.
Higher this
Go ahead.
Isn't it higher? It's estimated to be higher this year than it was the last 2 years.
No, it started out 5 years ago at 1.3, right? And it's gone down. We're now back at about 800 and whatever. It's just a comment.
I'm sorry, you're talking about income tax or something else?
Yeah, income tax.
We're collecting almost expecting 3.78 million this year in income tax.
Yes.
And then last year was 3.4, and the year before 3.5.
Right. But then prior to that, it was less.
So I can give you the numbers. FY22 was 3.9 million, and then 23 was 3.77. So let me give you 2 decimals. FY22 was 3.97. 23 was 3.77. 24 was 3.70. 25 3.49.
Yeah.
6 is estimated to be
Yeah, I'm just it's just curious. My thinking would have been, I don't know how many houses we get a year, 10, 15 turnover. And so it looks like it's pretty stable in terms of income tax, but my assumptions would have been that our income taxes would have been increasing fairly significantly. But I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay. I think the main thing we ought to be conscious of in terms of how things will change in the future for the town is that when Corso is built, that's going to add ultimately another 400 or so taxpayers, and a lot of them will be relatively wealthy. Now we have no idea they're all retirees, obviously, and advanced retirees. So I don't know, regardless of their wealth, that doesn't necessarily mean their income is very high. But nonetheless, it will add to the taxable base of the town. And these are residents who will be requiring virtually no services from the town. So the town is going to gain materially, I think, from that additional tax revenue, whatever it is, when Corso goes online. So that's another 2 years from now, but still it'll be that I think we will definitely see some change at that point. But you were going to answer normalization. I wasn't sure, Todd, what exactly you meant by normalizing.
Basically, they're just the State Department of Assessments and Taxation said, well, I can read to you the specific paragraph. The January 2025 reconciling distribution totals 59.2 million, 60.5% lower than in January 2024. Reconciling distributions are volatile primarily because they depend on amounts in and the accuracy of prior estimated distributions, and because they typically involve higher income taxpayers and late filers. The significant decline in the final reconciling distribution and the significant increase in the fourth reconciling distribution over the prior year likely reflect a return to more normal return processing and reconciling distribution patterns following the implementation of statutory changes to pass-through entity return filing. So they were saying these numbers were normalizing in this instance, and we received significantly less money in the January 2025 distribution than we had in previous years. I mean, in 23, we got $500,000 in January. In FY25, we got 63,000.
And so they're saying because we're improving our payments of estimated taxes to you, the amount of the final reconciliation payment is likely to be less.
Right.
But it's not suggesting there's a change in the total amount of cash that's received. It's just putting it in different tranches of payment. Okay. I'll just say, Leah, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I went back. You did a lot more careful thought than I put into this, Todd. I did something really simple. I just went back the 3 years that were on your sheet. So 3.5 million for FY25, 3.4 million for FY26, and an estimated 3.78 for FY26. And the average of those 3 years is 3.56 million. And I won't bleed and die on any of this because all we're really debating is how much we estimate for income tax revenues, which flows into how large a surplus we have. But as I've mentioned to Todd and Carlo, I have an instinctual feeling that since the estimated payments we're going to receive in FY27 derive from the actual calendar year 2025 income tax payments, I just feel that, because of DOGE, some people did lose jobs. I don't know. I feel like we ought to err on being a little more conservative. And so using a 3-year average, which conveniently I will suggest cuts our expected revenue by a couple $100,000, I personally feel more comfortable with. And I'm not going to pretend to you it's scientific. I'm not going to pretend to you it's as careful as Todd's analysis, but it just feels a little more comfortable to me. And all it means is that the surplus we show at the bottom line is 660,000 instead of 880,000. But that's just me. That's where I would feel a little more comfortable. So I'll just leave it at that.
Barney, I'll just add, because since you and I talked about this, I've been giving it a little more thought, and actually one small comment I would make on your calculation is, and you're using for FY26 the budgeted income.
You're right. That's a mistake on my part. I should not have done that. Yeah,
if you use the estimated amount, then the 3-year average is 3,663,000.
Okay, if you go back to the 3.7 in 2024, right?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. My math was wrong. I accept that.
It would result in an adjustment of about 118,000 or so, if my math is right.
And then I would still go with that. I would still take the 3 years and bring it down a little bit.
Do you want to make it 3.65 or 3.66 or?
What was the
3-year average based on actuals and the current fiscal year 26 estimate is 3,663,000.
So say 3.6
0.6 million.
3.6, yeah. We're okay with that?
Yes.
Thank you for pointing out my dumb mistake in math. I appreciate it,
No,
Carl.
and your comments about the the timing of this, I think are spot on. And also, as Todd mentioned earlier, it's very volatile. And
Yeah.
if a couple people move out, it can be a big difference. So being a
Yeah.
little more cautious,
Mhm.
I think is good.
Mhm.
Great.
Okay, let's move on if we're okay with that.
There's a line item that's land use planning and development consultants. And just roll up here. That account includes funding for professional services that are related to a number of special projects, either Corso, Chevy Chase redevelopment. I don't anticipate much from that requiring professional consultants. The Bethesda Market Park redevelopment project, Bethesda downtown plan implementation is effectively complete. Purple line mitigation and possible review of the town code. I don't know what any of you think about anticipated expenditures in 27 for any of those services, professional consultants in land use planning and development for any of those projects. But I think in the past 2 years, we've spent about $1,000 from those line items. I budgeted 15,000, I believe, which I budgeted this year as well. Let me just check here. Yeah, we spent $1,190.25. We're expected to spend about $1,000 this year. The budget last year was 30,000. The budget this year was 30,000. I'm reducing it to 15,000 for next year. I can't imagine we would need that level of funds to cover what we anticipate in any of those special projects I just mentioned, but just wanted to raise that to you to let you know that I've reduced it from 30 this year to 15 next.
I'm fine with that. Thinking about the Bethesda Market Park, given how long it's taking for Bernstein to do the redesign work now that they've purchased the corner building on Leland in Wisconsin, I'm hard pressed to think that there's going to be anything more than some preliminary work on site plan during uh, during this upcoming fiscal year. And that does not involve much legal work. That's just our involvement as participating with parks, the Parks Department. What will cost more money is when we actually get into legal agreements. But I'm hard pressed to feel that those are likely to be shaped in FY27. I think they're more likely to be shaped in FY28. And I say that because what Parks has done is put in place an agreement whereby they will reimburse the developers for costs of the park design. What has been negotiated and initialed but not yet executed is an agreement between the county and Bernstein for the county to reimburse the developers for the cost of the design work of the garage. And with those two reimbursement agreements in place, my sense is that all parties will sort of push off the final negotiation of the legal documents, which are really only required at the time of closing, until the next fiscal year. In other words, these two agreements I just described for reimbursement of design costs is all the developers need to be comfortable that they will be made whole during the design process. And as I say, that's going to extend for quite a while. So my hunch is that it's a reasonable guess that the legal documents will probably not happen until FY28. We could be wrong, and if so, we'll have to come back for a supplemental. But I'm not I think Todd's taken a reasonable view about what we might engage in this coming fiscal year.
Yeah, and I agree, Barney. And I think in terms of the site planning stuff, our land use committee um, and long range planning have done a good job of reviewing those kinds of documents. So we're not going to need much legal help for that.
Right.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks. I'm switching locations, so bear with me a second. The next line item I wanted to speak about is Rainscape Supplemental Rebate Program. We offer a supplemental rebate to what the county offers for people who participate, residents who participate in the rebate program. Participation has been, ever since we instituted the program, it's been okay, not great. 1 in participant in 23, 4 in 24, 2 in 25. We've had 3 smaller reimbursements in 26. I just wanted to check with the council to see if you wanted to continue this Raidscape supplemental rebate program. I've budgeted 7,500 next year. I anticipate we'll probably spend around that this year. It'll allow 2 or 3 people to participate likely. I don't know what the level of interest is. There's nothing in the pipeline right now. The interest might have waned. People who wanted to take advantage of it may have already done so. I just don't know if you want to continue the program or you just want to discontinue it.
I should mention that this is something I probably should have raised with the CEC committee, in our past meetings, but I did raise it to one of the co-chairs today, and I think they support continuing it, even
No
though
harm in
it
continuing-
sounds
no
as if
harm.
there aren't as
Right.
many participants.
It's such a low amount, and it'll
Yeah, I'm happy.
allow those who want to participate to do so. So I'd leave it at 75.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't want, if we did decide to discontinue a program like that, I'd like to have it done publicly with discussion, letting
Right.
residents. I wouldn't want it done just as a budget line item cut out. So, yeah, I'm
Right,
fine with
right.
keeping it in.
Yeah, I would add,
Well,
is
this
on the
budget will
land
be
use
subject to a
committee
public
side, there's always a lot of concern about managing stormwater runoff from one's property and not impacting an adjacent property. So every little tool we can
Yeah.
encourage
Yeah.
to manage water, I think is probably good. So I'm for keeping it.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. Great.
The question is, I guess, do we change it to 7,500 or keep it at 10,000? What happens if
Let's see. I expect to FY24. I have QuickBooks pulled up here. Let me just see how much we spent in 24. When we had 4 participants, 24 would be right. We spent a total of 16,500 for. Actually, there were 5 participants in 24.
Why don't we just leave it at
hold
10
on.
then, Todd?
I'm wrong. Hold on.
Leave it at 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We're not trying to make a statement here.
No, right.
If it's used, that's fine. It's good.
Rainscapes at 10. Okay. Let's see. Charitable contributions. As you know, we have one charitable contribution budgeted as a line item called Senior Support Services. It's for Chevy Chase at Home. It's for $10,000 that we give them every year for operational costs, as the town was instrumental in standing up that senior support program. And that is called out in the budget as Senior Support Services for $10,000. This year, the town council also provided a charitable contribution to Chevy Chase Fire Department of $5,000 for ongoing operating expenses and anticipated capital projects. And there was some discussion of continuing that contribution in future years. And if the council wants to include that in this upcoming budget, I'm happy to do so. I would specifically say it's for Chevy Chase Fire Department rather than having just a all catch-all charitable contributions account. But if the council would like to include $5,000 again for Chevy Chase Fire Department, the council also provided Wonders Early Learning in the Lawton Center with a specific contribution of $5,765 for playground improvements. I would not recommend including that in next year's budget. I think that's really request-based, but there was some discussion among the council members about continuing the Chevy Chase Fire Department contribution. So that's for your discussion.
Thoughts, folks?
I'm supportive of it. You know, they're an ongoing operation. They serve our community. It's a relatively modest amount of money. So I think it's a good use of funds.
I think, don't we have 3 people on their board from the town, I think. So I think it's reasonable to assume that the interest of the town will be taken into consideration as they spend that money. So
I think that's a fair point.
yeah.
And also, we know that the county's under really severe budget
Yes, right.
restrictions. So
Yeah.
helping out the fire department is in that context. And Todd's entirely correct. When this came up, we all said to each other on the council that we realized in voting for this that we were basically accepting the likely responsibility of an ongoing level of support. So this is consistent with that.
I just want to make sure they have defibrillators.
Yeah, right. Right.
Okay.
All right, great. I'll put senior support services.
Don't put too many speed humps in the road.
Yeah.
Get there in time.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
The other
All right.
one, though, is what about the, I agree with you about Wonders, by the way. That's a specific request. What about the Rosemary Hills classroom?
I was about to get to that. Yeah. I had that under a separate discussion item in the list, but we can jump to that
Oh,
now.
sorry about that. Yes, you put it down below there. Yeah.
But we can skip to that because it is yes, it's a charitable contribution.
Yeah.
We are and it's appropriate to discuss now. The council agreed to fund their outdoor classroom project at $10,000 to provide $10,000, and then another $10,000 matched dollar for dollar by non-governmental funding sources. And I reached out to the organizer of this project, and I have not heard back from her. And I don't know why exactly, because I reached out several days ago. But the resolution that the council passed to provide this funding was conditioned upon review and approval of the final plans of the town's review and approval of the final plans and budget, approval of the project by Montgomery County School District, binding commitments from other funding sources that ensure complete funding for the project. And then the Rosemary Hills, the group organizing this had to have funding, the complete funding secured by September 1 of 2026, which would put it squarely in the 27 budget. But I think some discussion has to be had. I mean, the language of the resolution says funding sources that ensure complete funding for the project. Perhaps that means in whatever form it ultimately takes, because it also is contingent upon review and approval of final plans and budget. So it may not be the plans they're envisioning if they receive fewer funds than anticipated, but we would have to review it and determine whether those contribution amounts were consistent with the level of effort they're putting into it, based on the original plans or a scaled down set of plans. Nevertheless, the funding will come due in some form, assumedly in 27. So we could include $20,000 as a placeholder that would allow us to fund 10 plus match 10. Or we could do some other amount as you see fit.
Well, Todd, let me ask this question: in the sense of putting together this budget, are we basically saying to ourselves, this is money that we expect to be spending?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
And I honestly think there is a question mark about this project. We don't really know that it's going to go ahead.
Right.
I would be, on the other hand, I don't want anyone surprised. We do have a resolution which we passed in good faith. And so I guess I would come down and say, yes, we still expect it to go forward. There's risk that it won't. Um, but I would recommend we put down 15,000 because that assumes that the match is only half made. And I think that's probably more realistic than assuming that the match is 100% made. So we would be putting in the initial 10 plus 5,000. Because I think when I last spoke to gotten her name, the woman who's organizing all this, she'd gotten up to like $3,000 or $4,000 of matching. So we're bringing it up to 5,000 is reasonable. And I think we would, if someone asks us the question, we still think it is likely to happen, but there are some things that have to be approved. It's not a guaranteed, but we thought prudent to put in the budget so that it's represented as something which we have consistent with our past resolution.
Makes sense to me.
Make sense?
Yeah,
Sure.
makes sense.
Good.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you. Street sign replacement project. This is already reflected in the proposed budget you have. It's in the capital budget. It's under street signs and street lights. It's a project that would cost, as we estimate, around $35,000. I think staff thinks, and have raised this to prior town administration, that our street signs are pretty bad looking. They've been there for a long time. They precede me, and I've been there a long time.
Todd, I didn't know they were made back in the 18th century.
They were, absolutely. But they were done by the prior manager, and Dave remembers when they were done. And probably just after he came on board, right, Dave?
Yeah, they were actually existed when I started. We've replaced some over time, but a lot of them are not in the best shape.
Yeah, and so they're cracked, they're sun damaged, they're old looking. It would be a nice refresher to update those. And I can, and we'll send examples. We replace some that don't look like the existing ones in one section of town that I can send you a representative example of to do as a test phase. And they're nice, they're attractive. Definitely an improvement aesthetically and visually in terms of visual identification. 85 signs we're thinking $400 each for the poles and all the crossbars and the signs. And so it's about $34,000 project, but we're proposing it. If the council wants to proceed with it, we can include it in the budget or alternatively take it out because it's already in. But that's for your discussion.
Does that include the town of Chevy Chase entry signs too?
It does not, Rich, but we could do that. They're not in horrible shape, are they?
No, some of them. One of them is pretty bad.
Oh, we could probably get that redone, refabricated. But this would just be the street signs, the street name signs.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tamara.
Sorry, I'm just looking for where those figures are.
Yeah, sure. It's if you go to do you have the PDF, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the sheet that's titled Capital Expenditures, scroll down to Capital Expenditures.
Okay. What page is it?
The
Page 7.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thanks.
Okay, I found it. Okay, great.
So the 27 budget is 50,000. That's 15 for normal street light or street sign improvements beyond the full replacement project of 35. So that's why it's 50.
You guys know more about how many and how much they cost than we do. So if you think that's a reasonable number, I'm fine with it.
I think it is.
I'm fine too.
Okay. I'll accept that. I, for one, have no sense that the signs are inadequate, but I will take other people's word for it, and I'm not
So
going to sweat this one.
The new ones, I think, at least there are some new ones on Leland and East, I think it is.
Oh, is that,
Yeah.
are those the new ones?
That's,
Yeah.
those are the new ones.
Oh,
and
they
there
do
are-
look much better. I hadn't,
Right.
I didn't realize those were the new ones. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
now I'm convinced. Okay, I got it. Okay.
Doesn't
Yeah,
take much
good.
for me to convince you on that one. Good.
Okay. All right, you got it.
Good,
Go
good.
for it.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Bradley Lane sidewalk widening. As you know, we've been talking about that and fire hydrant relocations as safety measures to improve pedestrian
Todd, forgive me for interrupting, but just let till I know I've had a chance to brief Tambra and Carlo on the situation there and under the fact that we're going to be asking residents to on a block by block basis to potentially come back and make a proposal. So I just want to let you know that I've had those conversations with my colleagues on the council.
Great, excellent. So that will be a supplemental if it ever comes to pass. I think if anybody chooses to participate and wants to widen their sidewalk in front of their house, we don't know yet what the response will be and participation levels will be. And it's hard to imagine how much we'd have to budget. And it would have to be done supplementally during the course of the fiscal year as supplemental appropriations, because we just don't know how many people will take advantage of it and what the price tag would be. So that I would recommend that you would address through supplemental appropriations during the course of the fiscal year. With respect to fire hydrant relocations, the actual there is a $25,000 amount reflected in the budget already under asphalt and concrete, and it's there because most of the costs associated with that will be redoing the asphalt, redoing the concrete sidewalk, and the actual relocation of the hydrant a few feet back or forward. What is it, Dave? Back, right?
Back towards the property.
Back towards the property line, right? So we budgeted $25,000 for that project in the budget already in the capital budget. Moving on to Montgomery Municipal Cable contribution. Council heard that this month, and last meeting. The request is to receive the town's franchise fee. Under a current MOU we have with them that we negotiated in November of 2021, we have given them, they need operating monies. There are monies that come in. These are public education and governmental grants that come in from the franchisees, primarily Comcast and Verizon. For some reason, when the franchise agreements were negotiated, there was a condition on using these grants from Comcast only for operating expenses, cable TV related operating expenses. And the Verizon grants were restricted to cable TV capital. MMC is flush with capital, but it doesn't have any operating. So since November of 2021, we have, under an MOU we negotiated with them, when we reestablished membership with them, we said you can keep the operating portion, the Comcast portion of our pay grant, but we'll retain the Verizon portion, which is capital related. So we've been giving them, it's around 36 to 39, right now it's around 36,000 that they are retaining each year from our full PEG allocation for ongoing operating expenses. They're reducing pretty quickly based on people pulling the cord on cable. And that's why they came out to all these member municipalities and asked for franchise fees, which are non-restricted for us. They go into general revenue and they amount to about $32,000 a year. That probably likely will decrease somewhat as people continue to pull the plug. Rather than do that, I proposed at the last meeting that we could continue to, under the existing MOU, could continue to provide the Comcast operating grant to MMC in future years, this coming year and in future years, as we've done since 2021. But we could and rather than give them the franchise fee, but that's kind of not making them generate more revenue. It's kind of it's continuing what we're doing in order to give them additional operating revenue. prior to 2021, when we negotiated this MOU, we weren't members of MMC from 2016 through November of 2021. So we received both forms of PAG monies, operating and capital. And calculating out from the time of the MOU, from the time of the start of the Comcast franchise agreement to November of 2021, means that we have approximately $450,000 we have in our balance of PAG monies. $258,550 is the Comcast operating portion that we accrued before we executed this MOU with MMC. And my suggestion is to give them that, which will sustain them, hopefully for quite some time. We have no use for those monies. We did use the capital, the capital portion of the Verizon capital pay grant to do a lot of improvements to the town hall. As you know, we put in cameras and we did audio, video, visual AV rack, and a lot of nice improvements to the town hall in terms of AV. And we did use a cable capital grant for that, the Verizon capital grant for that. And we'll still have a lot of money to do more capital improvements there. But from an operating perspective, the MOU states that MMC will provide this service for us if we give them this operating portion of the grant money. And the MOU will still be in place moving forward. It's just this one-time donation of what we've accrued in operating grant monies when we weren't members of MMC at the onset of the Comcast franchise up until we executed the MOU with MMC in November of 2021. So that's for your discussion.
Yeah, as I understood her when she made the presentation, they have kind of an immediate need, but they also have a continuing need because of the reduction. So I guess my question is, the franchise fees, I think, transferring the franchise fees to them would have allowed them to have a continuing source of revenue from us, rather than just coming to us on a yearly basis and getting some lump sum of money for operating.
Yeah. The balance of $258,550 in operating will sustain them for 8 years, and they'll continue to get each year, our share of future the Comcast operating portion of our pay grant, which is this year's $36,000.
Okay, so that's in our MOU. They would get that, or you have to revise the MOU?
We don't have to revise the MOU. The MOU gives them our Comcast operating portion in every future distribution. It would continue on. It would just be this one-time infusion of $258,550 plus continuation of their retention of the Comcast operating portion of the grant.
Okay. So this will sustain them as much as it can.
You'd be drawing from the grant, from our reserve, which, because I understand we can't really we can't use it for anything anyway, right? It's sort of locked in.
No, franchise fees are general revenue sources. Pay grants are restricted for cable TV operations and cable TV capital.
Right, exactly. So we're taking from a restricted reserve that we otherwise don't have any way to really need to draw from.
Right.
And we would be taking from it an amount that would equal the amount that they would have received had we turned over to them our franchise tax. Exactly. Is that right? The operating.
Instead of giving our we have two options. We continue giving them our operating pay grant, and we can also give them our franchise fee, which is $32,000 a year. But if we retain our franchise fee, which goes into the general revenue account, which is not restricted, instead of that, giving the balance in our restricted pay grant fund of $258,550, that's the equivalent of 8 years of franchise fees. And at that time, they can come back and ask for franchise fees at that point, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. But I'm okay with that. I guess, and please.
Oh, I guess I was just thinking, I guess I like the idea of going to the reserves. It can't be used for anything else. But I guess I'm just wondering in terms of a planning or, how the like one-time infusion of 8 years of money might affect the money they're getting from elsewhere or other municipalities' decisions about whether they should be handing over their franchise fee. I guess I just wonder.
Well, yep, we're in a unique
Uh,
situation in that respect, Ambra, because it was just the town in Garrett Park who decided to discontinue membership in MMC once the Comcast franchise was executed or finalized. So all the other municipalities have, or one, I think Garrett Park and the town are the only ones. Right now, we have both are retaining capital and giving them operating. Because they need operating more than anything. All the other municipalities just give them everything.
I
So
see.
they haven't been retaining anything and haven't been building these balances like the town has.
I guess I didn't fully understood something, Todd. Well, I guess what I had thought was that their ask was that we turn over to them our franchise fee, right?
Right. Right.
Which is 32,000 each year.
32,000. So what I was thinking was that we would commit to draw an amount um, from the reserve, the dedicated reserve, equal to the annual franchise
So
fee.
we
And we
can.
would do that every year for the next several years. In other words, we wouldn't turn it over to them as a lump sum.
Right. We
We
can
would do it on
absolutely.
an annual basis, but we would send over to them an amount equal to the franchise fee. So they would get what they're bargaining, what they're asking for. And
Okay.
we would just be paying it out of a restricted reserve. I think that's the win-win situation.
That
Um,
works absolutely just equally well. Sure.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so why don't we just do it that way? And then we're protected that we're not just giving it all at once. Which I hadn't thought we'd be doing that anyway. I thought we might as well just give it to them on an annual basis as they need it, but it would be the sum that they're expecting to get. But we don't have to give it to them on a front-loaded basis. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Makes sense.
Me.
Makes sense to
Yeah.
me. I would say, we also get the benefit of earning whatever interest.
Right.
Yeah,
someone
exactly.
sits in it.
And,
And
and let me add one other comment to it, which is, I think to Todd's good point before, I think the whole thing is very fragile, right? I mean, people are pulling the plug. Honestly, if it weren't for the fact that they handle the services, which we appreciate for handling hybrid meetings at our council meeting, we're hard pressed to know what value we get from this service. And I think, remember, I asked the question, are you thinking about, reorganizing yourselves, merging in with Montgomery County, whatever it's going to be. And I think the chances are we're going to see some fairly drastic changes over the next few years. So, all more to the point, to not turn over more than they're asking for on a year-to-year basis. And then ultimately, I think we're going to have to look to see what's the right backup. In other words, obviously, we don't need to have them do the hybrid servicing for us. I'm sure there are vendors out there who would be happy to provide it and arguably provide it for a lower price. So, I think we ought to just be ready to the fact that the whole ground here could shift a lot more dramatically than just the issue of helping them out for a few more years with an additional payment.
No, it works that way best. I think it's it's a good compromise way to do it rather than lump sum, give it to them, the equivalent of the franchise fees. Yeah.
Okay.
Should we give them the equivalent of what we receive, or should we lock it in at 32?
Well, the franchise fees are going to be determined by the people that stay on cable, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I think we ought to give them give them what they
Franchise.
have, the franchise fee, period.
Yeah, period.
Franchise fee, period, the equivalent of the franchise.
Equivalent to the dollars equal to the franchise fee.
Yeah,
But-
right.
But it may go down.
That's
Yeah,
right.
what I'm understanding. So
Yeah.
And I think that's
So
okay.
it
Then
won't
they
be-
can come back and tell us if they need more and how they want to look at it. But I don't think we ought to be providing an implicit hedge on the number of people who sign up for cable.
No, and as I recall her discussion, they are thinking in the future about how to merge.
Yeah, they are.
And
So their own costs might change and hopefully
That's
go
right.
down
It
themselves
may
as they
be
become more competitive.
right. It may be a very different paradigm we're looking at in the near future. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, good.
Okay.
Well, Barney, I almost made it in an hour. I have one more thing, unless anybody else has more. Battery powered leaf blower subsidy reinstatement. We had a request from just one resident to say reinstate it. Uh, Technology's new and people could use it to buy leaf blowers. I would not recommend it. We did that specifically in relation to our gas powered leaf blower ban. We had it open for a number of years. It was only one resident who requested it, and I'm not sure it's necessary to do it again. I don't think a lot of people would take advantage of it.
Well,
Not
since
using,
there are none available in
Especially-
Montgomery County anyhow, so gas powered anymore.
I'm sorry, did I say gas powered?
You meant a
Yeah.
subsidy for leaf for battery powered leaf blowers.
Battery
Battery
powered, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
Well, we understood what you were saying.
I just wanted to add that I raised this at one of our CEC meetings, and the committee did not feel that it needed to be continued because it was a one-off
Yeah.
program.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Good.
that's good.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I had. Unless you want to talk about snow removal costs, I have a budget.
It's fine with me. I know.
I just budgeted them at the same levels as this year, only because this year was anomalous, but we haven't spent that much in prior years, in many, many prior years.
Right.
So I kept that the same, but that's all I had, unless anybody has anything else. And if I could just review it real quickly. Tax duplication reimbursement based on the estimate we just received will go from 275 to 291. Income tax will be budgeted at 3.6. The rainscapes will be budgeted at 10. Chevy Chase Fire Department will be budgeted at 5. Rosemary Hills Elementary School outdoor classroom will be budgeted at 15. And Montgomery Municipal Cable will give them $32,000 per year from the restricted PEG fund for operating.
Perfect.
And then I'm asking council only to do one more thing, to make a motion to introduce an ordinance reflecting these changes so that the public hearing could be held at the annual meeting on May 5th.
Before you go, I do have a couple of questions, just very
Oh,
quick.
yeah, sorry.
Community of special events is at 80,000, and it's been at 80,000 forever. Do we ever want to increase it? I mean, are they getting that? That's still ample for everything
It's
they're doing?
ample. Yeah, we've never gone above that. The
Okay.
biggest,
I just wanted to ask the question. I wanted to make sure.
the biggest
Okay with that.
expense obviously is July 4th.
Now here's my major mystery question. I actually see, if I'm not mistaken, that you had estimated 23,000 for insurance in FY26, and we only spent 12,000. How on earth do we spend less money on insurance when everybody else I know in the world is finding themselves spending a lot more for premiums than they had anticipated?
You remember we got rid of the excess liability policy?
Oh, right. Okay.
That's why.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was dumbfounded. I couldn't understand how we spent less money.
Yeah. I'm surprised you caught that. I'm not really surprised. Not really surprised you got the party, but
then the last thing I want my colleagues to be aware of is that I think this is what we're actually seeing here. I want to confirm it. In the capital expenditure, the asphalt and concrete budget, which is down by 361,000. This, I believe, represents the beginning of a number of years of dividend, where we actually accelerated the repaving schedule of our streets because of all the rework done by WSCC and the gas company. So we now actually have our streets in a relatively newer, the average age of our asphalt and concrete work is younger than historically normal. And therefore, for a number of years, we're likely to see a lower than historically normal cost for repair and work on our streets and asphalt. Is that a fair statement, Dave? And
it's fair. Absolutely.
So that's something for us to recognize as another potential or likely benefit here going forward for several years. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks. Yeah.
I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Since there's been a lot of chatter about the recycling stuff in the town, and the Environment Committee is redoing the blurb in on the website about what's going to be in recycling, and now I understand I think it's 1, 2, and 5 are the only recyclable plastics that are going to be be recycled at our facility.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything about that until I saw that.
Yeah, I didn't either, but
I had not been communicated with at all about their communication with them and how they've determined that, or whether I mean, I even need to verify it. I just saw it from a town neighbor's post that someone sent me.
yeah.
So
So
I
I,
didn't
I just, and it brings, one of the residents said something about, well, Montgomery County does, at the transfer station, does accept a lot more than 1, 2, and 5. They accept a much wider range. So it raises the question of, is our contractor, the recycling contractor, capable of taking what comes out of the stream that they can't recycle to the county recycling facility. So essentially, we would be paying them to take their materials that they can't recycle to the recycling center. And so I just wanted to bring up, because I'm sure there'll be a cost to that if
Oh,
we
my.
ask them to do that, but
I think that would have to be a supplemental appropriation once we
I just,
verify, and
And I went on the tour, Rich, of our recycling
Right.
facility, and they wouldn't be able to do that.
no way.
They all the stuff gets dumped in, gets sorted to the best of their ability. Some 80% of it or so gets recycled or off into recycling channels, and the rest gets into a landfill. But I don't know that they would be able to take that final at 20% and then turn it over to the county. That's not.
I don't know.
They wouldn't. They wouldn't,
Yeah.
as a matter of,
Yeah.
as their procedures are. Waste management wouldn't. I can tell you, they wouldn't do that now. They wouldn't do it.
Okay, should we go on to executive session?
Oh yeah.
Oh, did we do the motion for the
Oh,
ordinance?
well, you have to do the motion, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The motion would be I move to to introduce an ordinance to adopt the FY27 budget and tax rates.
So moved.
So the
No,
only
but
question is if we
wanna-
make, once we bear down on the staff salaries, if we make any changes, how does that get reflected?
And reflected in the budget.
Yeah.
You can say as amended this evening, as
Okay. Now let's just then
this evening. Yeah.
right. Okay.
Okay. Hold on just 1 second. Pilar, we are going into a closed session, so I could ask you to thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for attending.
Very interesting.
I hope
Very
very enjoyable.
Thank you. Bye-bye.